Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here on a rainy, cold day in the Bay Area. My name is Michelle Smith-McDonald, and I wear a couple of hats here at San Jose State. So I am the university's Senior Director for Strategic Communications. But in a previous life, I had a more than 30-year career as a sports journalist covering primarily women's basketball. So I am going to be moderator for our esteemed panel today. But first, I kind of want to set the stage for us, and then we're going to watch the excerpt from Home Court. Let me just talk a little bit about today's conversation. Today's conversation explores how sports have served as something far more powerful in Asian American communities, sites of survival, belonging, resistance, and leadership. We are going to reflect on the parallels of Japanese American incarceration and Cambodian American genocide and resettlement, and how in both histories, community sports leagues emerged not as just as recreation, but as infrastructure, a space where dignity was restored and identity was rebuilt. We're also going to examine through Home Court how storytelling through film and journalism and lived experience have helped to recover erased histories and challenge narrow ideas of who belongs in basketball, in leadership, and in American life. In particular, we're going to center on Asian American girls and women in sports whose visibility continues to disrupt both racial and gender stereotypes. And finally, we're going to talk about youth empowerment, family dynamics, and the ways in which coaches and teams and community programs become bridges across generations shaped by their migration and trauma. At its core, today is about this question: what happens when we understand sports not as an extracurricular activity, but as essential to healing, to identity, and to community? And so I'm going to be honored to have this conversation, but first, I'm honored to present Home Court.
Get your hands in the air. Now the greatest is here. I'ma make this my year. Cause I'm finally here. Yeah, I'm finally here. Yeah, I'm finally here. Yeah, I'm finally here. If you call yourself a rapper, talk less and take notes. Raise sheep, respect those who praise me, but next toe we take peace, but flex toe, finesse peace, but bless those who say peace. They test hope to say peace, but stay woke. Cause I'm finally here. Now I'm finally here. Now I'm finally here. Now I'm finally here.
All right, everybody. First of all, I just want to sort of gauge general reaction to the excerpts from the movie. There is a full version. I was able to see the full thing online. There's a lot more basketball in it, so if you want to invest the time to watch the entire film, it's going to be available really soon, and you'll have an opportunity to watch the whole thing online. Let's talk about our panelists. All right, I'm going to start with Dr. Michael Dow. I'm going to have him come up, but we'll get this screen up so we can have our folks sit down. We have the tech gremlins. They're joining us for fun. Professor Michael Dow is an associate professor of kinesiology and the director of the San Jose University Human Rights Institute. As a proud alum, he teaches courses in history of sport and education, socio-cultural perspectives of sports, and international sport and physical education. So we welcome Professor Dow. Next, I would like to call up County Supervisor Margaret Abe-Koga. She is the first Japanese American woman to serve on the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. Already a champion of San Jose's Sustainable Japantown initiative, she became one of the first elected officials to become a supporter of SJSU's Never Again Is Now mural. And Dean Kobashigawa, has been an active member on the Ninja Board for 17 years. The Ninjas is a basketball organization founded more than 40 years ago to provide Asian American players a place to play, compete, and build community. And both of his daughters have played on Ninja teams throughout their middle and high school years. Welcome, Dean. Thank you. Started. So I think first I want to just get everybody's sort of impressions about what moved you, resonated for you in that, and I'll start with Professor Dow at the end and we'll come this way.
Yeah, I was able to watch the full movie before this, and I think everything resonated with me. I think particularly her relationship with her parents and having to navigate this difficulty of having this hybrid identity of being American and Cambodian and struggling with that, particularly when it comes to her parents' perceived lack of support, even though I think we can see that her parents really much care about her and her basketball opportunities. It just isn't shown in a way that we would see it so visibly.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really an honor to be here, and thank you for having me. This movie really did resonate with me quite a bit. I watched it as well in entirety. I was a wannabe athlete. Did actually played in an Asian volleyball league in college, so there's a lot of similarities and things I could relate to. I'm second generation. My parents were immigrants and working class, and the piece where the mom talks about how she couldn't or didn't go to a lot of activities really kind of hit me, because I remember having these arguments with my parents about why they wouldn't come to school to see me do this and that. But just the challenges of the immigrant experience, of being bicultural myself, the value of sports and athletics, that's really resonated even in my current life in the elected office. My daughter's actually here, and I don't mean to embarrass her, but my daughter Eileen's here. She works for the Faculty Association, and so she and her boss is here, so thank you for coming out. But definitely that whole experience of family. So a lot of great ties into just my own personal experience.
Not coach, just a board member.
Okay.
But the Asian ball in LA is similar to up here in Northern California, but like the guy said in the movie, it has club ball at the top, rec ball at the bottom, and then Asian ball somewhere in the middle. And Asian ball is it's a lot of basketball, it's a lot of community. So it's not just basketball, and it's a community for both the players and the families. So that's an important differentiator with Asian ball with the rest of other clubs.
Okay. All right. Well, Dean, I'm going to bring this first question to you. In what ways, during incarceration, Japanese Americans formed basketball leagues? Later, Southeast Asian refugees formed leagues during resettlement. In what ways has sports functioned as dignity, structure, and resistance in these moments?
Japanese American, these leagues started as Japanese American leagues, and there's not just basketball, but there's also volleyball, as Margaret mentioned, and there's also baseball. There's baseball leagues too. So it was a way to build community, foster identity. With Asian young students, the stereotype is passive, quiet, academic. So having these leagues and having these sports, students, Japanese Americans, to bring out their competitiveness, leadership, and other skills that they were able to develop due to these having these teams and having these leagues.
Send a question over to Professor Dow. You've described sports as spaces where trauma and race and identity are worked through collectively. What does that look like in practice? How does a gym become a site of healing?
Yeah, I think just building off the answer that I was given by Dean is that, taking sports and taking sports spaces and reclaiming it, reimagining it in a way that brings us joy and brings us happiness is resistance, right? Because for so long, whether it's in the incarceration camps or for my ancestors and my mother and father who came from Vietnam, we were really marginalized. So for us to have spaces with each other and to have community and share culture and share food is literally pushing back against the oppression and the marginalization that society puts onto us. So as these spaces, sports spaces, become much more accessible and they're opened up and then made into a way that our culture can be infused into it, I think that really speaks to the larger aspect and the ability for sport, physical activity, to really be a place of change.
For Supervisor, I want to talk about policy a little bit, how all this relates to policy and choices that we make as communities. How do these histories of injustice continue to shape present day decisions about youth funding, parks, recreation, and public memory?
Well, we are commemorating the signing of Executive Order 9066, which was a deliberate policy by the government based on fear and racism. So policy really does play a big role in determining what is is resources that are given to a community. At the county, we serve we're the social safety net. We serve the most vulnerable, and as supervisors, we have that role of trying to decide, and oftentimes, unfortunately, resources are limited. So where do those resources go? I think that it's important to representation matters because we bring with us our lived experience, our communities. I'm very proud to be able to represent the AAPI community, and as the first of two AAPI women, that's the lens that I bring. And so when I think about like sports, and we have a Parks and Recreation department, where are we going to put these resources? Number one for me is that making sure that we have an equity lens, and that we are providing for all parts of our community. And frankly, our AAPI community has traditionally mentioned, we tend to be quieter, we don't speak out as loud. And that was something, as the daughter of my parents who didn't speak English, I realized and I saw how when you don't have a voice in our community, you really struggle. And so that's really the guiding principle for me, is to make sure that everyone's voices are heard and resources are provided for all parts of our community.
Dean, how do Asian American athletes challenge racial expectations?
The stereotype of being quiet, passive, and academic gets challenged through sports, when you can be aggressive at times, and you can develop leadership skills, and you can use your strength and your quickness to break down those stereotype barriers that are there for Asian American, especially Asian American women.
As a follow-up to that, Ashley talked about her experience in recruiting with coaches. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, Asian American women especially have the stereotype that needs to be broken down. I have two daughters, so this is very important to me. And Asian American basketball, especially women's basketball, allows for them to be in a comfortable environment with teammates that are culturally similar to them, and allows them to push themselves a little more and to build self-confidence. And coaches, I'm not sure about the college coaching part of it, because my daughters weren't that good to make it to college ball, but they're looking for leadership skills, and those may not be able to be developed on a regular team or high school team. So it just provides a better, more comfortable environment for our daughters to take risks.
So I want to talk about representation for a bit, and I'm going to share a little bit of my own context and experience. As many of you know, the Golden State Valkyries WNBA team began this year, and they had a huge smashing debut, sold out every night. They played a playoff game here in San Jose, just as packed as it was up in San Francisco for the duration of the season. And they are led by Natalie Nakase, the first Japanese-American head coach in the history of the league. And having covered that team during the course of the season, she was asked about it before every single game. Generally, coaches will come out and they'll talk a little bit about before the game, and she was asked about the importance of her representation to the community before virtually every game. There is also a player who ultimately, I'm not sure if we saw her in this video yet, but she's in the full-length version, named Caitlin Chen, who also played in the Ivy League and then ended up playing her senior season at Connecticut, won a national championship, and she is on the Valkyries roster as well. And there has been a hearty embrace of Caitlin Chen in the Bay Area. And Caitlin Chen is not a frontline player. She is a role player on that team. She's a player who comes off the bench, whose minutes aren't as big as some other players. But the fact that she's on that roster, and then they began immediately printing jerseys with her name on it. They were, she was getting out into the community and doing community events. So there is this important embrace I see, and I'm witnessing through the Valkyries in particular, Asian American women and in this sports and in this basketball landscape. So, Professor Dale, can you just talk about the importance of representation and being able to see it to be it?
Yeah, I think all of us can have some sort of story, whether it's your racialization, your sexuality, or your gender, even your class. To see someone who probably has a very similar life experience as you, it means a lot. It means the world, right? And I think for Caitlin Chen and the coach for the Valkyries, they're showing that women who are Asian, who have often been fetishized in the geisha lens, and often been told to be submissive and culturally sort of following this patriarchal lens, coaches that you don't have to do that, and you don't need to be told to do that, and you don't have to follow that, which really breaks down so many different stereotypes and so many racialized perspectives of Asian American women. I remember in 2012 when Jeremy Lin got hot in February and on the Knicks, and how everybody loved it, right? And I think it really showed the opportunity and the ability that representation can crack, these barriers that are often positioned and put up against certain demographics without any real sort of substantiating evidence.
So I say, you can look at not just watching the Olympics, see Chloe Kim and ice skaters. So yeah, that part's really appreciate what they're doing for the country.
Dean, if I can follow up, do you see a reflection of that excitement about representation on your teams in the interest in families to come and play? Does it boost what you all are doing to have role models out there?
Yeah, I think so. Asian Americans like to follow Asian Americans, so it's when they're on TV, we're all watching. So when we're talking about playing Asian American basketball and trying to recruit players to play in our organization, it's sometimes an easy sell to say that we build community here and let's see and we provide a great environment for your Asian American son or daughter.
Talking about the Olympics, I think what's so great is that they representing the United States, and if you look at there's quite a few Asian Americans on Team USA, and I just thought how great that is for folks to see Asians as American and representing this country, especially in light of our past and our history and what we're commemorating today, when there was a time where and I'll say even to this day, because of the way we're looked, we are still seen as foreigners in many occasions, but the representation there with Olympics, Team USA, I think is really helping to break some of those stereotypes and barriers for us.
I do want to talk a little bit about the role of coaches, and you all maybe the role of the coach in this particular movie as a bridge between the athlete and the family. And you will see that there was true love there, I think, between the coach and Ashley, and her own experience as an Asian American and the way she brought that. But how do coaches navigate? I'm going to direct this one to Professor Dow. How do coaches navigate those tensions or build those bridges between family expectations and the ambitions of their children?
As someone, we do have a psychic coaching class here, then I wish that person can be in my head right now so I can answer that question. But I think what the video has shown and some of my own experiences in the research is that you would hope that the coach means well, right? You would hope that the coach is creating a bridge between the family, the team, and really nuancing a lot of these cultural elements. Even the scene when the coach is talking to her parents about recruiting. I don't know much about recruiting. It was an experience I had in my life, but knowing coaches who are across different universities, that is a very daunting reality and experience, right? Choosing what schools to go to, going through the phone calls, the text messages, and as a parent who, a working class parent whose English is their second language, who didn't go to university, that can be a very tough sort of process to go through. So the coach, the high school coach, is pivotal, and particularly for Ashley's case, is actually so important, because that is the bridge of how do you talk, what do you ask, what kind of questions are you asking, with the hope that it's really about Ashley's experience and her growth and enrichment. So the coach is huge.
She was lucky in that her coach was Asian American. If having a Caucasian coach, not understanding the culture and what and being the first generation immigrant parents, I think the situation would be very, very different.
I do want to share that a line from the film that resonated with me was when the coach was talking to and about coaches, and how that they would not just be changing this girl's life by offering her an opportunity at Princeton, at one of the Ivy League schools, at any of the colleges, but that they would be setting a new path for this entire family, which I felt that. I felt really that, the coach not only believed that, but the truism in that this was a generational opportunity. And so maybe Supervisor, can you speak to that a little bit?
Thank you. Yes. So I was the first in my family to go to college. As mentioned, my parents were working class, didn't speak English, and so I was fortunate to have a college counselor who took me in as a freshman and call me in and tell me, what to do. And I was fortunate to get admitted to Harvard, and it really was this like a life-changing experience. My parents, whose education was cut short, they were in Japan during the war and after the war. And then for me to just be able to go across the country, experience a different place, and meet so many people from all over the world, and really also just showing me what is possible. And I think that was really the breakthrough is to setting a new course, I guess, for our family to be able to see what else is achievable.
I want to come back to you, Supervisor, in another policy sort of area about what is true investment in Asian American youth sports? What does it look like, and what does it look like going forward in your mind?
So I would say that it would mean to, again, be able to put the resources needed. So facilities, for instance, it's important. Having programs that are culturally competent isn't the right word anymore, but and I think that we saw that with as Dean mentioned, having a coach who's Asian American and I noticed most of the players were Asian too, and that goes back to like having role models and understanding the backgrounds of the players. So being able to provide all of that, making it accessible, affordable. I know my younger daughter played club volleyball, how expensive that can be. So being able to make that accessible for more young folks across the board.
I want to direct this one to Dean. What is the responsibility of institutions? And institutions could be cities and counties. They could be universities. They could be high schools or school systems or a club system. But what is the responsibility do they have to support Asian American athletes, to support their ambitions, to provide that foundation for them?
Yeah, the support needs to come from just make sure there's inclusion and diversification for not just for Asian Americans, but for other cultures and for other levels of income, and just so there's a lot of responsibility from those institutions. But it's not just for Asian Americans.
I want to ask everybody here as we kind of wind down, and I want to go down the line. I'll start with Professor Dow. What gives you hope when you look at after watching the film and just sort of these conversations and the experience that we're having in the Bay Area with Asian American athletes and the like?
I think what gives me hope is that we're having conversations like this. I have a colleague and their son in the audience right now, and he gives me hope as a young Asian American basketball player to see a future in which there is just a grander representation across so many different industries, so many different lenses, and so many different capacities that really highlights our dynamic as human beings in this country.
Yeah, so having been in this arena for about 35 years now, I definitely see the advancement of our community, and it goes back to representation, just having more AAPIs in sports and in all aspects really. But I get excited when I see Shohei Ohtani, and he's not just loved by Japanese or Asian Americans, but really by everyone. And that's what gives me hope that we really are, I think, being more accepted and integrated into what the mainstream is about, and that we really are now a part of the community more than we were 30 years ago or 85 years ago.
Yeah, I don't want to repeat, but I totally agree with what Dr. Dow and Margaret just mentioned, but we have come a long way, and you see a lot of Asian Americans on TV, which is great because, like I mentioned earlier, Asian Americans like to watch Asian Americans. We've come a long way. There's still more to go, obviously, but I'm pretty happy with the way things have progressed in the past generations.
I want to leave a little space for questions. If anybody, we have just a few minutes, but if anybody has any questions for anybody on the panel wants to share any thoughts about things that they saw in the film? Anybody? For hands. All right. Going once. Okay. In the back. Can you come up a little bit?
I just wanted to say that thank you to everyone for playing the panel and for the discussions, because I'm currently a coach for a league that I coach back home in Newark, and it's called D League, and it's supposed to be for our future goal, like women equity sports, because a lot of women don't get that opportunity, especially young girls. Especially young girls, they don't get a lot of opportunities, whether it's AAU or other sports. Like, we provide a league for that. So to see a documentary like that puts a lot of smile on my face, and for a lot of people I know back home, especially my coaches, like, we're trying to really create a bigger community for them. So see something like that, like, I just want to say thank you, and I really appreciate that.
Questions for the professor. Talking about sports, politics have been hit or miss in sports. The Ali era, athletes spoke out. Jordan era, nah. Kobe LeBron, yeah, again. And it's been hit or miss when we sometimes find out more about the athletes we want to idolize. And the example I'll use, Kurt Suzuki. I was a JA catcher, loved Kurt Suzuki, played for Oakland even though I was a Giants fan. Wins the World Series, goes to the White House, he's rocking a MAGA hat. And done. How difficult do you think it is for athletes, finally to get noticed as individuals, but then they also have to carry that because there's so few of them, their views get mixed in as well?
Well, the first thing we need to understand is, like, sports has never been apolitical. It's always been a political terrain. And unfortunately, the people that we may idolize for their athletic ability may not be the people we should idolize for their beliefs and how the discourses that they play into. Some would say, you shouldn't talk about politics. You shouldn't talk about these things when you're on camera, or, just keep quiet. But there is this inconvenient truth that all of us are affected by politics, and to shy away from that, when you do have a platform to affect change, then I actually think it would be an injustice not to mention it. And I think the people who can do it well are doing it.
And I would say, and I don't have a mic, but I would just say women's basketball players, WNBA players, have been among the most outspoken. They have put themselves out on the limb more than many other athletes. A lot of these athletes who do put themselves out on a limb have $1 million contracts to back them up, and the women don't have that, at least not currently, and they've put themselves out there in a really powerful way. I think we're gonna wrap. Folks are headed out the door, and it's 1:15. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our panel.